Before we get started, just a reminder that today's episode is not to be taken as financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so we encourage you to speak with a financial advisor regarding your own situation. Cool, let's get stuck in. Hello and welcome to It's No Secret. Today we have a bit of a special episode in store for you, which I will chat to you a bit more about soon. But firstly, I want to introduce the guest that I have with me today. You might be noticing that Kat isn't here. So I'm joined firstly by James Blair. James is the Wealth Director and a Financial Advisor at Lighthouse Financial. He also co-hosts his own financial podcast called Checks and Balances. Welcome, James, firstly.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. And then behind the scenes, we have, who you can't see, we have my partner, Ollie, who has kindly volunteered / been forced into coming onto the podcast to talk about money, because today, drum roll please, we are doing a live financial plan session. So that's very broad. James, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself firstly, and then what we're doing here today and what a financial plan is?
Sure. Firstly, well done to the two of you. The reason I became a financial advisor is I'm a super nosy guy. So I want to know everything about everybody, and we're going to pretty much do that here. So to be sharing and being authentic, well done to the two of you. I've also never recorded a financial plan on a podcast before. So we're all in the same boat. In terms of kind of what I do, so I'm a financial advisor at Lighthouse. We have a team of accountants, mortgage brokers, insurance advisors, financial advisors. Our purpose as a business is to help Kiwis secure their financial future. Probably quite similar to doing what you're doing and around Kernel's purpose, that money doesn't buy happiness, but it's really hard to be happy if your money situation is not at a certain base level. And what we do on the financial planning side is pretty much go, you're here at the moment, this is what you're trying to achieve, the life you're trying to build, this is the best way to get there. And the other part is talking about, it's all led with your goals. It's not about, I want to buy so many properties, or I want so much money in the bank, or this crypto to the moon, or whatever. It's really about, what do you want your money to do to help you live a certain lifestyle? Yeah,
nice. I was just thinking, but that would be quite nice to have XYZ amount of properties.
But then it's about, why would it be nice? It's probably because it makes you think, then I could go and do this certain thing.
Yeah, it's buying back time and having choice.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, exactly.
So what we're going to do today is pretty much talk all about the two of you. So financial plans. I can see Ollie squirming in the corner, being
slightly nervous.
Yeah. Here we go. I'll go easy, and then I'll build into the tougher questions. A financial plan is. And what today is all about is, and I don't know how long we'll go for, me understanding your situation, how you think about your money, and most importantly, what's important to you when it comes to money. Because everybody's, in terms of how much money do I need for my first home or for retirement or whatever, it's completely dependent on what that person wants. So today's all about asking questions, understanding your situation, and I will take all of that away. So I will have a goals and a bit of an idea of the kind of strategy, and then we will come back and present you a financial plan and go
stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and go, here is the roadmap going forward for you. This is where you want to go. Yeah. And it completely depends on your situation in terms of what that looks like. But then a financial plan is great, but it's all about actioning off the back of it. Yeah. So I am like a dog with a bone, that if you say you're going to do something because you want it for your future, a plan without action is just a piece of paper.
Yeah. Love that. I love accountability, so that's great.
Yeah,
cool. I'm ready to get stuck in. How about you?
I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Holly's I'm ready as I'll ever be.
Do I have a choice at this point? No.
Yeah. So as a bit of background, Ollie and Christine have filled out a little bit of information about their situation. So I've asked about their kind of financial situation, their goals, their jobs, all of those sort of things. So I've got a little bit of background already. So I want to kind of dive into that. Yeah. But you can only say so much on paper. So before we jump into it, tell me the Christine and Ollie story.
Do you want to start?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you go. Throw you on the deep end. Go on.
What was it? 3 years ago, roughly?
3.5.
3.5. Who's counting?
Okay, so this is not going to go well if that's where we're starting from.
No, sorry. You go.
So I think it started off, we met 3.5 years ago, had been dating. It kind of went pretty quick, and I quickly learnt with Christine nothing was off topic when it came to money and everything else in between. which was quite a departure from how I had been living my life beforehand. We've been very forthcoming about future goals, where we want to go, where we see our life going, what we actually want. Like, do we want a Lambo in the garage, or do we want freedom and choice? Do we want the bach or the kind of holiday house somewhere by the beach? So we've had quite honest discussions
So
pretty
far,
regularly.
Yeah. So what would you say that we want, like, that we've talked about?
We want freedom. We want to travel. We want flexibility. I don't think we want huge amounts of debt, and I might be more so for myself, but it's more about that more lighthearted freedom, being able to give opportunities if we have family or whatnot, and to see the world.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like the choice and the freedom and like having the buffer. So we were talking about this, I mean, between us, but also kind of in the office about what does financial freedom mean to us. And me personally, it's being able to walk into Faro and not care about what I spend on my grocery bill. Like it's that kind of level where you get to a point where you're comfortable enough to not have to worry about the small stuff. In terms of like where we are at financially and how we, I guess, manage our money, we don't have combined finances, so we're separate. And I think that's kind of a product of like us, not having bought like a house, and it's kind of those pinnacle points that generally force you into combining your money. We also like both quite like learning about money, and so it's quite like fun to have our own spreadsheets and like compare the colours that we chose on the same graphs that we use and
really,
stuff
you've
like
gone
that.
for that tinge of green, and
Yeah.
You guys sound like you're a hoot, by the way. Like.
Yeah. Ollie's pretty funny.
Yeah. So I mean that financial freedom point is because it's different to different people. Sometimes people refer to financial freedom as I want to retire in 5 years, and I go, well, if you're 30 and want to retire in 5 years, you probably picked the wrong job. But so some people talk about financial freedom as like an early retirement, or even the option not to work, because the phrase retirement these days, it's kind of like, well, what are you going to do with your time? There's only so many Netflix series. Sometimes people, like say for me personally, I think I'll probably work forever in some form or another, just because I enjoy it. I like the challenge. I get to be nosy. But I like the ability that I wouldn't have to think about the idea of doing the things that you want to do. But if you want financial freedom earlier, it means essentially your money's got to last you longer in a period where you're not working. So which between those two would you say financial freedom? Like, are you quite happy to keep working for a long period of time, or?
Me personally, absolutely. Like, I love work. I think it's super fun, and I also like luxury things. Like, I like the lifestyle that I can create when I have that flow of income. I also think that 25 years I get bored, so of doing nothing. But how about you? I think you're pretty the same. Like, you love your work, right?
Love my work, love my career, but I also love this idea of being able to hand in my notice, walk away, and live by the beach and have this kind of nomadic lifestyle. I have this kind of almost sadistic fantasy of I could walk away and have freedom, have no one kind of telling me what to do.
Yeah.
But I do love what I do, and I kind of think that I would have to have some working capacity to kind of fuel my fire.
Yeah, we call that FU money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I also, something that we've often talked about is like, I guess the whole conversation around who's going to stay at home with the kids when we have them at some point. Yeah, let's get stuck in. And Ollie really wants to have a point at where he can be at home with the kids for a long period of time, or at the very least be in a job or situation where you can have that time and freedom to like be present. And I think that like presence is probably a really key word, and that you're not so wrapped up in the career or the work or the money or whatever that you forget to like actually enjoy everything in between.
And just be present.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's quite similar to my situation. So my wife is giving birth to our strong baby boy in like 4 weeks. By the time this comes up, the boy might be here. Who knows?
Congrats.
But
that's so exciting.
It's a very common thing to be going, well, how are we going to manage this? The first like 1,000 days in a baby's life, etc. So working through all of those things. Okay. So we would like the flexibility to have options in the future, which is a pretty common goal. Okay, well, talk to me about, so you've spoken about goals in the longer term. How about in the shorter term? I mean, you alluded to kids and those sort of things. Say in 3 years' time, what are we imagining, if things go to plan, happening over the next 3 years?
Oliver?
I'm always starting off. I think this is her way of testing me. 3 years' time, I can see it being, especially for myself as I enter my dirty 30s, quite soon. I see that there'll be some quite big life events that will be coming up. Like we've talked about getting married, we've talked about like kids probably beyond that 3 year scope, but it's kind of it's actually that kind of date on the horizon starting to look a little bit closer than it did before. Also things like travel for an extended period of time. I think over the last 3 years, we've been kind of relatively stuck, which has been quite difficult for the two of us. So we've got this kind of ambition of wanting to travel and for a little bit more than just a 2-week island holiday. We want something a bit more kind of
a reset, yeah,
to reset and just see what else is beyond our shores.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, like, as the one that needs to give birth to the children, I probably that timeline for me is more like 5 years, so like 3 to 5 years.
So when it comes to marriage, I mean, Ollie, if you want to propose right here, right now, it'd probably be great for views. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Good content.
Yeah. Would be great content. But what kind of time frame are we looking at?
It's probably the one asking. We should ask him.
Well, I think this is where it's kind of one of those financial questions comes up as
what can
the
we
ring.
actually...
And there's those kind of more logistical questions where Christine's very clear as to what she wants and what she likes.
Yeah.
So
and you're gonna wear it forever, right?
The one and only. So that's something that I have had to consider, is that is something that I will probably be having to look at, having to buy relatively soon.
Can I just jump in right there? We have had conversations around like I'm more than happy to pay for half of it because I'm not like opposed to pulling my weight. And also I can't sit here and be like, I want a nice ring and then expect you to pay for it, right?
Me and a lot do.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But I'm all for the independent woman as well, right?
Exactly.
I'll give you a pro tip, Ollie. Okay. So, I mean, we need to plan for these things.
What about the honeymoon?
Well, we haven't even got to the engagement yet. Have we got an idea on how much we'd like to spend on a ring? Like a sort of ballpark number?
Well, okay. Should I tell you a funny story?
Yep.
Can I tell them the story about? Yeah, okay. So Ollie's mum is obviously very keen on this idea of marriage and rings and things. And so we went back to Wellington and she was like, oh, I found this shop. We have to go ring shopping. And of course, well, actually, we got there and the shop had been burgled. So we're like, okay, well, that's not happening. There's nothing left for us to look at. And then once we got past that, we went inside and naturally I gravitated towards the biggest ring in there. And it was something like 20, 30 grand or something. And I was
Slightly,
like, was it more? Oh, yeah. But I was like, there's no way that I would expect you to pay that much. But I also don't know what like is reasonable to spend on a ring. Like that seems like a lot of saving.
Yeah, the old saying is like 3 months salary, right? Yeah. But I think that's completely irrelevant these days and those sort of things. So like what are you thinking, like 10 to 15 type range or
something like that? If it's lab grown, yeah.
Have you thought about what kind of wedding you would like?
I mean, I would love to elope, but Ollie wants family there.
But very small in my mind, not a huge
like event,
Just family, close friends, financial advisor, that kind
of thing. Exactly.
Don't tempt me, I'd be super down for that.
We'll see how the end of this goes.
Yeah. We'll try and keep it all together. Marriage, have we thought about like a budget for...
Not really, to be honest, but I think so. We would much rather spend the money on traveling as a honeymoon rather than like the actual marriage itself. So, I mean, I am in the phase where almost every one of my friends, except like 3, are engaged or have recently gotten engaged, and they're spending like up to 60 grand on a wedding, which I don't know, just seems like a little bit hard to justify. So
it doesn't seem like us. I think when you start throwing that number or that ballpark number around, it doesn't feel like it aligns to what we actually want. And it kind of feels like that would be like a societal pressure to have a big wedding.
And that's the whole thing, is there's no right or wrong answers with that either.
Yeah.
It's just whatever. I mean, yes, like 60 grand for a day is a lot, but if it means a lot to you and you can justify it and it's part of your plan, then as long as it's like, maybe, just one wedding. That's always good for the financial plan as well. Number one killer of wealth, divorce. So just saying.
Or having international families, which I do.
Okay. So these shorter term goals, like the travel, the marriage, and the ring, in terms of your finances at the moment, like you've got some savings, but most of it's in growth assets.
Yeah.
How are you going to, especially a good reminder at the moment, when we've had the worst first 6 months for the stock market since the 1970s, how are we going to fund these costs?
It's a very good question. It's probably why we're here. Because to date, we've kind of focused all of our energy and efforts on investing our money, because I think coming out of, actually you've got more of a story around this, and having previously had money sit in cash, it kind of created this urgency of need to feel like we needed to invest all of our money to be growing it as rapidly and as high risk as we could, because we're young and have a long time horizon. I think what we've maybe done wrong is that we haven't really considered short to medium term goals, and therefore we're left with a lot of our money in assets that aren't necessarily suitable for these traveling and all that kind of stuff. So I would then say that's probably where we want to refocus our energy now, to be how do we save up our cash reserves. That said, there might be another potential opportunity to invest in private equity in the next 4 months, and so we're do we forego these other life goals in place of this one that could exponentially move us forward in the future? Did that summarize it all right?
I think pretty succinctly, yeah.
Yep. It really comes down to what's most important to you. There is, once again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just coming to this is our list of priorities. And I was talking to a customer and did a plan for a customer the other day where they pretty much wanted everything. They were in their 40s, they had good incomes, but they wanted to upgrade their home and they wanted to have a holiday home. Yeah. And I was like, you got to choose. Yeah. And they were like, well, what do you mean? And I did the projections on the mortgage. I was like, see that? That means you'll never retire. And it's this, it's you just got to say it as it is. Yeah. But it's just picking between investing and kind of maybe huge returns. Is that more important? Will that opportunity be there in the future? If it does, what does that look like? Versus, I do get the vibe that engagement, wedding, and travel, in the next couple of years, those things they're going to happen, right? Otherwise, you're probably not going to be that happy, which means we need to plan for it. Yeah. And if we've got goals under 3 years, the answer is cash. Yeah. And the reason that we go with cash is because if you invest in shares or crypto or anything like that with short-term goals, we call that gambling. And we don't like to gamble. We like to take long-term averages, to your point, that when you're investing, you're young, you've got a really long time frame. But sometimes if you've got short-term goals, you might as well be 62 with your money because you want to use it in 3 years' time. So we need to be, if I add all those things up, very high level, the wedding plus engagement ring plus travel plus the honeymoon, it's probably going to be, even if you'll cut back on those things, it'll be at least 50 grand, right?
Yeah. 25 each.
We could win the lotto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sell our organ. No.
Yeah. Sell an organ. Yeah. There's a shortage at the moment. It's just a demand and supply game. I don't know.
Side hustle? No.
Yeah. Side hustles are the answer to everything for
passive income, right?
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I want to talk about your assets in a second, but let's jump over to your budget. So do you want to talk to a million different ways to budget? Once again, no right or wrong answers. Obviously, you've got some very intriguing colours that you've allocated to certain line items, which, once again, sounds like a great Saturday night. Yeah. Do you want to talk me through how you budget?
Yeah. You can start, Ollie, because I took inspiration from you. How did you find your budget?
So my budget is my Bible. I think I found it on Reddit, maybe the personal finance for New Zealand not too long ago. Oh, no, actually, it was a long time ago. I've kind of adapted and evolved it, and it's definitely got my kind of personalised touch on it now.
It's gotten more colourful since I joined, right? Yeah.
A lot of colours. So basically, it's broken down where it's got a salary calculator. It's then got expenses where it takes into account things like student loan or other liabilities I may have. It then has areas where I put in my fixed kind of expenses and then also variable expenses. So that might be like insurance, where there's an annual payment that goes out once every year. And then it's also got a savings component where I can start to allocate how much I'm saving, where that's all going. And I try and use that to try and create a bit of a ratio around expenses, savings, and investing. So I have a kind of like trying to meet some sort of rationale I'm happy with in terms of those percentages.
And then how does that translate into your like everyday management of money? Because it's one thing putting it in a spreadsheet, it's another thing like actually allocating that money, right?
Yeah. So I've tried to automate as much as I can, and for the both of us as well. So our shared expenses, it's pretty automated at the moment. We've got a separate joint account where it's just money goes in, money goes out for like our living costs. But everything else we kind of do a bit more ad hoc and a bit sporadically, maybe not the most structured way, which kind of goes contrary to how we're doing everything else. But we're trying to work on that and get a bit more of a structured joint account.
Yeah. You have like in a certain amount that you like pay yourself first every paycheck, right? And that's like never changes, really, does it?
True.
Yeah. So I feel like that's kind of how I've tried to adopt it as well. I have the exact same spreadsheet, except I don't look at it as much in depth. I kind of just look at the like total value and whether I'm like moving closer or further away from the like shorter term goals. I also have like AP set up around how much I pay myself first every fortnight. But I somehow just managed to go over my allocated amounts every time. So
I saw a comment in there like, can I read what you've written?
Yeah.
Sure. Ollie, the word frugal has been thrown around somewhere. Ollie is somewhat frugal. Hey, financial advisors love the word frugal.
Also, somewhat.
Yeah.
also
somewhat.
difference between frugal and cheap, right?
Yeah. Hey, whatever helps. We want to get to this wedding. And Christine, more on the spending side, which is very diplomatic. So how close do you get to whatever's in the budget, sticking to it? Or is it sometimes you're very consistent and sometimes it kind of blows out a little
Veers
bit?
off. Yeah, pretty much. I think like I definitely have like a bottom line where if I go reach that point or even get closer to that, then I'm like, oh, wow, I really need to double down to fix it for the next month to make up for it. But I generally, like my eating out is just like out of control, basically.
Yep.
I just don't, my food budget every week is blown. But also food is fun. So I'm trying to like, maybe it's the way that I'm like bucketing it, you know?
Okay. So how much are we saving? Do you both get paid fortnightly?
Yeah.
Nice. How much are you saving a fortnight?
So I save $800 a fortnight.
Okay. Well, where is that money going?
So currently it's into my like emergency fund to rebuild it because recently I had some dental work done, which was about like $1,200. And then I also had to pay a car insurance premium because I backed into a pole. Yeah, that was fun. And so I drained my emergency account. And so I'm trying to like build that up again, but also like given the year that we're about to enter, not predicting the future at all, I'm trying to build my cash reserves and noting that we've got like short-term goals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all going into the emergency fund at the moment.
Yeah.
The funds you're investing in the stocks, are you contributing to those?
The funds, no. That's like, yeah. So I put a bit of a hold on that because we had the opportunity to invest in private equity. So the like lump sum of cash I had, I just put all into that and kind of counted that as my investing.
Cool.
Yeah. And then since it's been more around like maintaining my emergency fund and then we went traveling, it was a bit downhill.
Okay. Somewhat frugal, Ollie. We'll see if that sticks. How much are you saving a fortnight?
A shade under $1,000 a fortnight.
You guys are good.
Yeah.
I would add that's pure cash at the moment. I've kind of, from being quite growth focused, I've now kind of gone to a bit more conservative, trying to build up my cash with an eye on future goals, but also future opportunities like the private equity that's been mentioned. But the thing that I've been able to do this year is build up my emergency fund to be about 4 to 5 months worth of expenses. So that's kind of was actually quite a relief to have that kind of backup because I had kind of been drained and then kind of realised that actually that was a position I wasn't comfortable with.
Yep. And then for those that are listening as well, you might go, oh, these guys are saving $1,800 a fortnight. That's quite a lot for a couple to be saving a fortnight. And without going into too much of specifics, you guys aren't earning moonbeams. Like you've got a budget, you're sticking to it by the sounds of it most of the time because nobody's perfect, right? Yeah. And it's having like the right kind of attitude around money. So that's a really good starting point. Do we want to? And then I might let you lead this so you can talk about the way you want to talk about it. Yeah. Probably a good chance to start to kind of run through the financial position in whatever way you're comfortable doing it.
Yeah, cool. So if I look at my colourful spreadsheet here, roughly, and in terms of a breakdown, my share portfolio, I split between like Kernel and Hatch, and it kind of is, I'm invested primarily in index funds and then with some satellites that are individual stocks. I also have a very small amount in crypto, but that was like trying to test out how to use easy crypto. Like it wasn't a serious type thing.
It used to be more?
Yeah, it was, started at like $1,000 and now it's at 378. So it's a bit of a steep clip.
Slight plug, checks and balances last year when crypto was like 60 grand. I called that it would go down to like 20, so proud of myself.
Yeah, but this is not financial advice and we can't predict the future, right?
We're going to put a good disclaimer on the start of this video. I'm shorting crypto because James said so in a podcast.
So the share portfolio makes up about 30% of my total like net worth. Mm-hmm. And then my KiwiSaver is my largest investment, and that's 40%. Mm-hmm. Then I have included things like my share of the value of our car, which mm-hmm. isn't actually that much. It's like $2,500. Mm-hmm. Got to save on cheap cars. And then in savings, I have about $8,000, yep. which is mainly emergency fund, but also kind of like, I think I updated this when I got paid, so it looked a bit better.
Cool.
Yeah.
A little bit back down now?
Yeah, probably. Okay. Like maybe give or take a couple hundred.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Lastly, my private equity equates to about 15% of my net worth. So yeah, over to you, Ollie.
So I'm pretty heavily invested in growth assets at the moment. Just looking at how I've kind of got my percentages allocated to each part of my kind of how I break down my net worth. So my stock portfolio or investment portfolio is currently accounts for roughly 50% of my current net worth. Used to be a lot more. Sadly, it's definitely been on the decline as of this year. Same goes for my crypto holdings, which, less said the better.
Moving on.
Also have the private equity, like Christine said, that accounts for roughly 6% of my net worth. I've then got I've got a lot of cash and kind of cash savings accounts that are spread over different platforms and in different currencies, which makes it quite confusing to keep track of. But that roughly I sit at about 12% cash of my current net worth, which was a lot more than it used to be. Then have a lot of miscellaneous type things, assets, like Christine said, with half of a car value that we take into account. But KiwiSaver is in a growth fund, but that's just on the side, not really considering that as part of my kind of day-to-day pocket money, I should say, or that's future Ollie's problem or delight. And then what I do have, which Christine doesn't have, is I have a bit of liabilities to my name. So I have a student loan that I'm slowly working my way through, but thanks inflation for helping me out. And then have a parental loan that I actually used for purchasing some part of a private equity shares. And that is just in the background that my parents will one day tap me on the shoulder and say I have to pay them back. And maybe there'll be interest, maybe there won't be, but we'll see how nice they will be to me.
Yeah, the phrase "thanks for that inflation" don't hear that very often, do you? Unless it's sarcastic.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Cool. Okay, so it's a good breakdown. So the obvious question is, all of these assets and what you've got going on, what are you investing and saving for?
Retirement is probably a good answer.
Sounds boring.
Yeah, it does. So I reckon there's definitely, we would like to own a home at some point. I just don't really know when, and that's probably a good segue into your next question. And where, yeah. And I think the, where part is preventing us from the when part. Yeah, but also, do we use our KiwiSaver for that or not? Not so sure. And so there's in the short term, we don't know. It's kind of just working.
Okay. Awesome. let's talk about the short-term goals first, because if you're saving $1,800 a fortnight between the two of you, if you add that up over a year, it works out, I think it was somewhere around like 40 grand, $46,000.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I mean, that sounds great. The obvious question is people going to be, James, saving $1,800 a fortnight. I'm doing a great job. I'm like, cool. How consistent are you with that? When you want to like buy Christmas presents or have short-term goals, that savings, does that get dipped into for short-term expenses?
Ollie?
Probably me less so. But
Under the bus you go.
I save less and I spend more. How depressing.
I think it just depends. If I've, like last week when I spent $100 on new houseplants, that was probably where I start to fall short. But
For context, Ollie's a landscape architect, so he's kind of entitled to do that. But anyway.
You know, my wife's very into plants, but I've noticed since, because we went dog, then we got a baby, the amount of, because they say babies are the new dogs and plants are the new dogs. I think that makes sense. So yeah, she went through a phase where she bought lots of plants, but it's like there's no room left. Okay, so of that, because pretty much your short-term goals in 18 months will be dealt with cash and savings if that's what we focus on and channel our savings to, which means we don't have to touch the rest of the stuff. Because if you weren't saving, you're going to have to pull out your investments and you're going to have to put it into cash, and probably still tell you to do it in a down market because there's no guarantee how long a down market lasts for. So do we think that, say, over the next 18, 24 months, that should be the focus, that we're focusing on saving for those short-term, very happy memory goals?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I would say yes, but also we can be flexible on the timeline because there's a part of me that wants it all.
Cool. Okay. What else is there to get? What else is there to get?
The private equity stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So,
like, I don't want to rule that out completely for both of us, but also we probably not recommended, but we can like borrow money to get that option. And
that can be quite a good option, because, so, I mean, we're going to start talking about debt in a second, where there's good debts and there's bad debts. If you're buying equity into a business and you borrow, I mean, to be honest, like 95% of people are doing that. I mean, the standard thing is, say financial advisors, right? Old geezer builds a financial advice business. Young person comes along. He's like, I want X amount. Young advisor's like, I don't have that. So it's a loan with an interest rate, and the dividends slowly pay that back over time. So that can be a really good option. You've just got to be careful of, like, obviously the interest rates and those sort of things to make sure it's worth doing. But I think that's probably something definitely to explore.
Okay, cool. That's reassuring.
Outside of the having it all, which maybe that can be the statement for the financial plan.
Wow, yeah.
Anything else in having it all?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ollie?
don't think so. I think the only thing that could come up is if we feel like we need to travel maybe a bit more urgently than what we're kind of planning. So we have got Christine's family's overseas, and I know that we're kind of always getting tapped on the shoulder to come join them for a holiday or go see them. And I think that's something that I think could probably come up maybe sooner than we probably anticipate relative to our other goals.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Now, what a lot of people would be thinking or doing in your situation, they look at kind of your total assets, and there is enough there to kind of talk about, maybe not your dream home for a first home deposit, but, the Kiwi way is you save up money and then you throw everything at property and hope for the best.
Yep.
You guys doing something a little bit different?
Yeah, I think it's probably the European influence of our families. But in terms of do we buy a home / have we ever wanted to, I'm quite I'd love to build a home, but I know that James is probably cringing when I say that.
I think Christine wants to miss a few steps on the
Yeah. I don't really like the idea of buying a shitter, excuse my French, and then renovating it and then upselling and then buying, selling. It's just so much admin. Why would you do that? I guess my question is, when I could be spending that time and money on other things. I think also I'm so firm in my belief that you can retire comfortably without having to have a huge house or be sitting on a property empire. So how can we do that?
Cool. Holly, how do you feel about property?
I think we did consider it quite seriously. Was it 12 to 18 months ago? We kind of, as it was really starting to peak and there was a lot of, the FOMO was really hitting in, and we had a lot of friends and kind of just social group. It was all we would talk about. And we were considering it. We went to a mortgage broker and we kind of like got the numbers laid out in front of us, and it was like, we can do this, but did we want to? And that's when we kind of started thinking about long-term goals in terms of moving, and just, was it something that we wanted to do? Did we want to live in, a small
townhouse,
less than like satisfactory place? Whereas we quite enjoy the freedom of renting. So kind of property, it kind of got just deferred. It kind of got pushed down the road, and we were thinking that we'll kind of approach it when we're in maybe a bit more kind of a secure position, and also secure in where we want to be and what we kind of want. Because at the moment it's just the two of us, but we've got this kind of freedom and flexibility that we quite enjoy.
Yeah, the experience with the mortgage advisor was kind of interesting as well. Like, it just was a bit savage and like pushy, and so we were like, I don't really like being pushed into a decision that we're not really that comfortable yet.
Yeah.
So I think that has deterred us a little bit further away from property as well.
That's cool. Do you see yourself owning a house at some point in the future, or could you see yourself renting for the rest of your life?
Probably not the rest of our lives. I think the idea of owning a home and having a place that's yours does appeal to some degree.
Yeah.
Quite significantly to me. Yeah, I can't see renting forever. So I think, and it's something that as I'm getting older, I do start to see that kind of, I'm getting to this point with renting and moving, and kind of, I just would quite like to actually like have some roots that I could put down and have some place that I could kind of, I don't have to worry about hanging up a poster or something. I can kind of have a bit more ownership.
Yeah. And talk to me about your current lifestyle in terms of where do you rent? Do you live with other people? How much is your rent?
So just the two of us. We've got a nice little 1.5 bedroom unit in Parnell. So it's really nice, really central. We barely pay any kind of transport costs apart from our private car that we just use on the weekend. But it's actually, it works really well for us, and it's close to the city, but also easy enough for us to get away on the weekends and get to enjoy a bit more kind of freedom. It's roughly $600 plus utilities, but it's just the two of us, and it's pretty weekly, but it's pretty low maintenance, and like, because it's a unit, we spend nothing on power, and water's included. Like, it feels like it's actually quite affordable for what we're getting.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. And have you thought about an investment, like living where you are and buying an investment property instead?
Maybe.
If you had to move to, because realistically, right, you're probably not going to be buying. Because if you're buying there's this great study that Westpac did on freehold houses versus townhouses versus apartments, capital gains over from like 2000 to 2020, and it was like, standalone houses did, and don't quote me on the numbers, was like 500% over the 20 years. Townhouses were like 450%, and apartments were like 240% in terms of capital gains. So you definitely want to stay away from any sort of like apartment or unit or anything like that. And then there's body corp fees. Don't get me started on body corporates either. So you probably wouldn't, and Parnell's like, it's a really affluent, expensive area, right? Do you really like your lifestyle? You wouldn't, the obvious thing is moving to like Te 2 Peninsula and buying like a new build townhouse, those sort of things, right? Do you go, we really like our lifestyle, we don't really want to?
I really want like a backyard.
Yep.
I really want some grass in my life, basically.
Cool.
Because I really like being in nature, and I think that's where the desire for like building on a larger piece of land comes from.
Cool. Okay.
But I appreciate the fact that that's like I can't have everything right now.
Yeah.
It feels like our sacrifice that we may be giving in terms of the backyard at the moment does afford us flexibility and lower cost, and like no transport. We commute to work, and it's a 20-minute walk for the two of us. So we've got some definite pros that we're able to enjoy. But yeah, I would love a backyard, love to be able to kind of own something where it's kind of, it's mine.
Yeah. Cool. So the house you buy, your first home, you know what I'm going to say?
I know what you're going to say. It's not your forever home.
It's not your forever home. And when people think of it as their forever home, do we know what happens? Nothing.
They're
because
emotionally invested.
yeah, and it has to tick enough boxes, and because the reality is you're living in like a 1.5 bedroom place, and at the moment, like that's not your forever home, but it's about taking steps in the right direction. Because I mean, I just ran over what's happened to the property market over the past 20 years, and the property market's down at the moment. And yes, we won't see a year like 2021 like consistently because that's not sustainable. But the reality is houses are going to double every like 15 years. And why is that? It's just inflation. Housing is just an inflation metric that everybody's salaries go up. Which means they can look to afford more, which means housing prices continue to go up. New Zealand population continues to kind of get denser and all of those sort of things. So whether it is an own home or an investment property, the challenge we'd have with an investment property is the deposit requirements change. Right. So with your own home, you could do a 10% deposit. I'm not a mortgage broker. We'd have to get a mortgage broker in. That is a good fit for the two of you. But a 10% deposit's very doable if it's your first home. You also don't have to live in that home forever. So if you're using your KiwiSaver, you have to live in it for 6 months, but it doesn't mean you need to live in it for 3 years, right? Yeah. There's options after a period of time. Of course, we want to make sure that we're doing what we should be doing with those pieces. If it's an investment property, it's a 20% deposit, which does, in terms of your overall financial position, does get quite like top heavy, and especially you can't take into account your KiwiSaver with an investment property. So that's probably a little bit the owner occupied for a period of time would probably be the better option for the two of you. I was thinking about before shares versus property. So let me make this very clear. I'm a holistic financial planner at my core. I'm an investment planner. I hate the whole property. That's the only way to grow your wealth. It's not true, but it's kind of true at the same time, though. So shares are a better asset because they are more diversified. You don't have one plonk of land with a tenant attached and like all of those different things. People think diversifying is buying a place in Auckland and buying a place in South Auckland. That's not diversification. So shares, you can do a lot of different things. You can also add like commercial property portfolios, bonds, kind of do some cool things. The benefit of property is leverage. So, if you have $100,000 in shares and you make an 8% return, you're pretty happy. You made $8,000. But you can take that $100,000, buy $1 million house, and if that goes up 5% a year, which is less than what shares go up on average over the long term, it's $50,000. So $8,000 versus $50,000, hard to argue. The other problem, and why I asked the question about do you see yourself living forever, it's going to be super hard for you to outsave and outinvest unless you're picking meme stocks that are about to take off. It's really hard to outperform like just a bigger widget, which is the loan of the house. So I would probably be an advocate for you really looking at buying a house. And I can have a bit of a think, and that's when we come back with a plan, and we can go option A, option B, investment property versus owner-occupied home. Couple other things to take into consideration. Interest rates. So this statement, interest rates have tripled in like 12 months. It's a bonkers statement. But there is definitely some questions around like affordability and repayments. But when I think about your cash flow, I actually think $3,000 a fortnight, not $1,800 a fortnight, and that's because I consider your rent and your savings combined in terms of what you could do, and because obviously you wouldn't be renting anymore. There's one-off costs associated, but if you buy and you're on the property ladder, it's going to make, whenever you get that dream home and you kind of go on grand designs and build your forever home in the Hawke's Bay, like...
That sounds like me.
Yeah, if it's... the way you said that as well. If it's in 10 years' time, because reality is like the amount of cash you'll need to be able to do something like that, because a build is different financing and all those sort of things, you can use the equity that you will have built in the property. And the other piece, just like the share market, those who thought property was safe as houses and it never goes down boy, is it going down at the moment, which, like at Lighthouse, we're talking to more first home buyers than we've ever spoken to before, just because you've got like 20% more purchasing power than you had in the past. And then obviously with inflation, a lot of people getting pay rises, those sort of things.
Yeah, immediately I'm like, but it's all of your money in one asset. And it's like there's an element of flexibility that you take away because you're literally grounded in a house. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I like have it deeply ingrained in me that shares in the way, contrary to every Kiwi probably listening to this podcast.
Yeah. I think for me, I just start thinking about how buying a house would defer and kind of push a lot of our short-term goals to maybe becoming more medium-term, like the overseas travel. That may be something that instead of our kind of grand ambitions of a 3-month holiday in Italy, it might be a 1 week in Fiji while we're trying to pay our mortgage. Like there'd be, I think, we'd have to really reassess where we're valuing or where those goals are actually going to sit in our timeline.
What if if I go away and find out a way to make that work, where Christine's I want everything type plan, which didn't include property, but I've thrown it in. Like if that was an option, because the other thing is you don't have to buy a house tomorrow. You might go, well, we're going to continue to focus on saving for another 6 or 12 or 18 months, right? Planning is not about what we do tomorrow. It's what we do over a long period of time. And property is part of your plan at some point. And if it's not going to be at some point in the near future, at what point will it become part of the plan?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. You do make a good point though about like, I think it's easy just to look 1 to 3 years ahead and forget about, well, what about like 5 to 7, and like how does a property in the medium verging on long term to then get you to the long term dream house, like how does that process work? Or like actually also crunching the numbers. I think we've not actually sat down and been like, how much do we need to comfortably retire? And like, I have a vague idea, but it's kind of like all up in my head,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to make this really clear. This is not James's plan. I'm not going to put an idea on you and be like, this is something that you have to do. Yeah. My concern is more along the lines of if it's something you want to do in the future. I just can't see how shares are going to help you outsave. I understand flexibility. So if you're going, we're not ready yet because we've got these other things we want to focus on, then that's completely cool. But it's kind of like once you've achieved those short-term goals, then what happens afterwards and prioritizing at some point. And a lot of I think there's probably a way to make these things work out. And that's where I go away and have a really good think about like the plan. I'll probably be calling and emailing you to ask like follow-up questions with and talking you through some things and seeing where we land. Because your plan going forward is relatively straightforward. We've got short-term goals. There's a question mark over at what point the property comes in. When the property comes in, we then focus on paying down debt. And the reason we focus on paying down debt is if mortgage rates are at 6%, your share portfolio is making 8%, you take off tax, fees, and inflation, you might be at 3 or 4 while the mortgage rate's at 6. So we've got to focus on paying down debt. You might go to me, but James, what about compounding returns? There's reverse compounding returns with mortgages. So I like going on my loan app and seeing like I'm spent $1 less on interest this fortnight because it's slowly, and the bank's going to own me for a long period of time, but they're slowly going to pay. I'm slowly paying off the debt over a period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts, Ollie?
I think you make a pretty compelling case for the things about the property and thinking about it in terms of that kind of, mortgage rate, guaranteed return. What are we actually working with?
Yeah.
I think it just at the moment, property just seems like it's something that's it's a big hurdle where we start looking at, the sticker cost of what these houses are selling for and what you're actually getting for what you have to pay. You bring into the whole other kind of aspect of rising mortgage payments. Each week you start seeing about new rates, new rises. That's there's more of a emotional response, I think, to more than to the number aspect, but it's time to think about, God, that's a huge increase. Like what would our lives be? Would we be, beans on toast for every meal to make it work? Like I think I start to go to this kind of quite
panicky.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially the media's job, right, is to enforce an emotional response. But I think the other component is at this stage, we don't even know if it's a good idea. It's just an idea, and knowledge is power. And then you can kind of go, here's option A, here's option B, which is really the two strategies. Is one is that, so the primary concern is the short-term goals. So we make the short-term goals fit. Yeah. But then it's, do we keep investing into funds, or do we look to invest into property? Yeah. And the funds have their place, but it's just beating leverage is very, very difficult to do. Property, the other interesting thing is when it gets to like retirement point and people have made their money by property, I'm like, all right, time to switch strategies because this ain't going to work for you. Yeah. And they're like, but it's always worked for me. But you've got no income. You're asset rich and cash poor. So it definitely pivots when you need income. Yeah. Property's not the way to go, but it's just what's right for you at this stage. Okay, before we wrap up, I just want to ask you a couple more questions. Yeah. So a financial plan's got 3 aspects to it. Your goals, where you want to go, growing your wealth. So that's like budgeting, property, shares, KiwiSaver, debt repayment, all those kind of things, and protecting your wealth. It's great. I can loop it into the financial plan because nobody likes to talk about anything bad happening. You guys have some like pretty reasonable assets. Do you have a will?
No.
Okay. Have you thought about getting a will?
Yes.
That's a no from me.
Yeah. Okay.
A prenup, no jokes. That's not a will, but anyway.
Pretty common. It's all, you know what's most awkward? When I'm like, have you thought about a prenup? And then the look I get from the person where it's not in their best interest. Yeah. What are you doing to me? So life insurance is probably not something that's super important at this stage, but income protection. Have you looked into income protection? Do you have income protection?
I have actually looked into it and I got a quote, but I decided because we don't have, like, we could, in theory, sell everything and have money pretty quickly or lean on family should I lose my job, whatever, then we could fall on that. So a little bit risky, I know that, but that's kind of what I landed on.
Yeah, okay. Did you invest in all those assets and build that wealth for retirement or as an insurance policy?
I mean, I think you know the answer.
Yeah. Even if it's like a super basic level of income protection, I think it would be a really good idea because your income is your biggest asset. Your health is your biggest asset. You can put like a really basic level of, like, you go see an insurance advisor, they sell you like this gold-plated thing. Yeah. You can do like a really basic thing, which gives you some like minimum protection because if you don't have your income, like, it's not looking good at all. Yeah.
I do have health insurance. Cool. And Ollie is about to get it as well.
I would argue, and this is not financial advice, that income protection is more important to you than health insurance. And the reason for that is, so the public system is a mess, but there is a public system there. While if you get sick and can't work, there's nobody, I mean, there's the benefit, but that's not doing much for you. So I would actually put income protection as more of a priority than health insurance. But leave that with me as something to think about.
Also, I have endometriosis, so I need that protected.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good disclosure. Alrighty. Now, I think I've got everything I need as a starting point. I'll definitely be coming back to you with some more questions before we end up with a plan. Cool. Is there anything else I need to know about your situation? Have you withheld any information?
That we're pretty happy. I think that's something to add. Is that
cute,
there is financial strain or like we are worried about our future, but at the moment we are pretty happy and content with where we are in life and knowing that things could get better as we climb up in our career and get more, opportunities that come our way. So I think that's something that I try and remind myself.
Yeah, I think we're kind of reaching at that point Kat and I often talk about is like the exponential growth where we're starting to build a bit of like momentum, I guess. And we're like, as much as we say we want to travel and these things, we are pretty like committed and open to like really doubling down to like see the growth now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So next steps from here, I'm going to take all the information we've spoken about over the last hour or so and have a think about your situation. I'm going to come back by email, phone call, because there's going to be missing things, because telling me your life story in an hour is probably not enough. Yeah. Then I'm going to go away and put it into a financial plan. So a financial plan is a live document that is like the cornerstone of your finances moving forward. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like your spreadsheet, but the next level, not out on the Reddit forums just yet. It goes, here's where you are now. These are your goals in priority of where you want to go. And then the next part is this is how we're going to get there. Yeah. I'm going to do an option A and an option B. One is talking about property. One is talking about like shares, managed funds, but the priority being those short-term goals we spoke about. Mm-hmm. We've got some really cool financial planning software. So we're able to, and we give you access to it as well, where we go like, here's what the projections look like in terms of if there's debt, share portfolio, your contributions, all of those sort of things, and showing you, mapping you out at certain ages where you can be, mm-hmm. and comparing that to the property section and helping you go, right, what do we want to do? And then we can just have a discussion. When we go through the financial plan next, it's not like done. It's not just like, okay, we've got a plan and we're over. The plan could change a lot. Yeah. At that point, and that's cool. Like it happens all the time. So we're always tweaking it, refining it, moving it, and then as part of like the annual review process, some people do more frequent reviews, depends on the person. Mm-hmm. We're updating the plan based off your situations, opportunities, what's changed in your life.
Cool. Sounds good to me. I love that. I'm excited. to see what comes of this. A little bit nervous, but excited. Cool. So yeah, thank you so much for spending so long with us, diving in. It's been really insightful also for me to understand more about Ollie, so it's really good.
Yeah.
And other than that, not much to say from here. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next Tuesday.